So what we're going to do is give an intro and background to the tool, and then we're going to jump in. I'm going to go through some of the different parts of the tool. Blake's going to talk about some of the ways that his agency's been using it. And hopefully that'll take us through most of the hour and not over. Uh, as we get rolling, just to say like who this is for and what we're talking about, what we're really talking about today is Google Search Console data. And about the limitations of what Google gives you natively through the user interface. And then we're going to get into comparisons of how this tool gets you just a radical amount of data in comparison to third-party tools. If you're an SEO, if you work in content marketing, if you work in paid, I think you're going to get a bunch of value out of this. If this already is confusing, this blog article that we shared here could be a great resource for you to learn more about the tool. Who's ready? You ready, Blake? This is for you. Of course, I had to do The Office, right?
Should I have a little Dwight action go on? Like,
No,
I don't know what he's gonna say, but
whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if I would, I do not do that.
Okay, so there's four basic sections of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about like the story of how we built it. We're going to go into what we learned along the way. We'll go through the tool. And then at the end, I'll kind of share what our development roadmap looks like for the next couple months to a year. So how did this all start? When I joined 2Octobers, I had been spending the past 3 or 4 months building out data pipelines using Supermetrics, pulling data into Sheets, and then taking data from Sheets, pushing it to BigQuery, processing it with a tool called dbt, and creating reporting timelines, building reporting solutions for clients. And that was the backstory. I joined 2Octobers on March 30th, which was a Monday. That Friday, my wife, like lots of folks, was laid off. And we very quickly were in a place where we didn't know what was going to happen. Horrible things happened. We all suffered loss, personal, professional, everything. And one of the things that I knew right away was that my particular clients were going to be really impacted by the pandemic. I didn't know quite how, but it became pretty clear really quickly. And what I learned was that our bike shops, which were the majority of my clients at the time, were experiencing the biggest year that they'd ever experienced in the past 30 or 40 years in terms of revenue. And so I knew that I needed to play defense a little bit on the reporting side, because as I had anticipated that when we came into 2021, that I was going to need 2019 data in order to have more compelling numbers for comparison. And so I decided that we needed to start thinking about pipelining data in. And so this was kind of how we got to here, how we got to now. In April, we identified the need. We had this background of dealing with Supermetrics. And so in June, after finishing Post-Ematics development, which was that Google Sheets add-on, we began experimenting with a solution wherein we'd pull data into Supermetrics, into a sheet, and then use AppScript to push to BigQuery. The major bummer about that, though, is that Google Sheets has a 5 million cell limit. And what that means in actuality is that as we were piping the data into Google Sheets, it would let us pull in a little over 710,000 rows of data, which sounds like a lot until you realize that if you're backfilling 16 months worth of data, you can get a maximum of 25 million rows per property. So we quickly realized that that wasn't going to be a great solution. We had all kinds of experimentation that went throughout the summer. In September, we developed our first Node.js application that was able to, with manually sort of babysitting the process, backfill 16 months worth of data in 2 to 3 hours. In December, I had taken that application from something that ran locally on my machine to something that ran as a serverless function up in the cloud, which scaled horizontally, which enabled us to pipe in or backfill all of our data in less than 5 minutes. So 25 million rows in 5 minutes, which to me was the crowning jewel up until that point, was to be able to do it all that quickly. In February, we launched a private beta for letting different agencies and organizations to take advantage of the tool. Blake was our first agency to take advantage of that, and it's been pretty amazing since then. We're going to get into lessons learned along the way, and they came in waves. That's the first thing that I would share. Most of the challenges on the early side were focused on doing all the data pipelining. And that's where a lot of my passion came into play. I also had a lot of years on the data visualization side. And a lot of those insights happened only in the past 2 months as we started to really explore the data that we had at our fingertips. So like, the first thing that we saw was, wow, it's amazing. We can filter, right? We can filter by all these different dimensions and metrics. And we also came to the realization really quickly that sometimes the problems that we set out to solve are not the ones that are most valuable. Or another way of saying it is, sometimes we solve problems we didn't even know about when we started the process. And that was definitely the case. We built the pipeline to play defense. But then along the way, we found that we built like a really killer weapon for competing in search. And that's only become apparent to us as we've really been building out our tool over the past couple of months. Blake, as we dive into the tool, I'm going to have the nav on the left. The ones that are labeled with a B are the ones that you can talk through. Is that cool?
Sure.
Sweet. The first thing that we're going to see is that this reporting tool is crazy fast. In relation to normal Google Data Studio with Search Console data, if you're doing anything complex with the normal connectors, you're used to waiting 30 to 60 seconds for stuff to load. When you're working with BigQuery, that process is like 1 to 3 seconds. It's way faster. We're also going to see stuff that we can do around question words, which is really amazing. And I'm hopeful that you're going to get a kick out of that, especially when you see what we do around striking distance queries, which Blake's going to dive into a bunch. Also, one of the things that's amazing that we can do is position bucketing, and I'll show you how that works. Also, we're going to have great visibility into overall campaign health. We're going to talk about content strategy, site structure filtering, and that's how it's done, right? So there's a lot more, but let's dive into the tool now, if that's okay with everybody. Cool. Whoops. Wasn't supposed to start with that. That was a mistake. Okay, so this is our like Swiss Army knife page, which is a pretty cool tool. It's got helpful instructions down in the bottom. You can filter by anything, whether it's search query contains or regex or in or whatever. You can filter by any row. It'll then impact all of our visualizations down below, which is pretty neat. You can filter by date. You can filter by position. You can really filter by any of the different kind of dimensions and metrics that we're pulling in. This page is really cool. I know that if I gave just this one page to Nico, he would be able to get a ton of work done. And this was the page that we built out as a prototype last September. And I figured that out because I went through our company meetings, and in the September company meeting, it was like, hey, we built a proof of concept of something that we'll be able to do with BigQuery. And so like this was the first thing that we built. This page is really neat. And of course, we're screen sharing, so everything's slower because there's a lot of data going up and downstream between all of our different cameras and everything. But this allows us to go through all of our data, and it's really great for us if we start with Search Console. This is the same client, and there's a great bookmarklet that we just built that enables you to get rid of the client's information out of this search input. And also over here, and if you look at my Twitter feed, you'll see how to do that. But it was just a nice way. And it allows you to also switch between tabs and still keep that client data hidden, which I thought was kind of fun. But if we get over into the performance report, and then we go into our queries and we type in the word where, over the last 3 months, I only have 2 rows. And just to make it interesting, we'll go as far back as Search Console will let us go. And we'll filter by the word where, which is pretty important for like a click to brick type of, or brick to click type of business. We see that we get 2 rows of data. And if I go into the same time frame, so I'm going back to, we'll just call it December 1 of 2019. And that gives the normal Search Console UI an extra 3 weeks of data, right? And I filter by where, I get a lot more, which is 2,079. So think about all the frequently asked questions content that you can add on any of your pieces of long form content. Same thing with any of these other question words. And these words are based on our experience of looking at other tools and how they're approaching how people ask questions. You can filter by queries or URLs, which is really neat. And you can also filter by position bucketing, which is really powerful. And what's neat about the position bucketing is that with the normal Search Console connectors, they have average position through the site connector, and they do not have average position at the URL level. And what that means is that you can't build position buckets if you're including both query and page with the normal Data Studio connectors. If you're doing it with just site level data, you can, but to my mind, there's very little of value if you can't see what page you're actually ranking for. You can also filter by the type of page. So you could look at just your collection pages, your articles, store pages, product detail pages. And I'll just filter by one so you can see how fast it is. And then we can also then search in Google for any one of those queries, and we can see how we're rating for it, which is pretty fun. That's the questions page. And then Blake, do you want to talk us through, I know I labeled the striking distance one, but do you want to talk about how you guys are using the first striking and second page?
Sure. I think we mainly use striking distance and ranking distribution.
Okay.
So like striking distance, like I said before in the intro, that we only work in 3-month sprints, and that's by design. And like when we come up to a point where we have to build a new roadmap, this is probably this is like one of the first reports myself or my AM look at, or the strategist looks at. And like if we change the date range to look at, if you want to change it up to like look at the last quarter,
okay,
or then you can, then once the data shows, everything kind of gets updated, we can kind of say, okay, what queries are we ranking position? I think it's 6 through 15, like where we literally are in striking distance of getting more traffic to these pages for top, bottom, mid funnel types of queries. So then the version 2, we have by keywords, you got page types and questions, which is really awesome because you can say, okay, I only want to look at by keywords. I don't want to look at anything top or mid funnel because I want to do the biggest bang for the buck for the client. So we look at by keywords and we say, okay, Santa Cruz C versus CC, not necessarily like an actual buy, but we say, okay, this page is ranking on average at the bottom of page 1, top of page 2. What can we do strategically to improve the rankings for that query set? Because then we could also look at by doing filtering and looking just kind of looking at like what other types of queries is this particular page ranking for that we should also consider that are in striking distance too. And so like from a strategy standpoint, it makes it super easy to drill down to where you might be ranking on page 1, but you're not getting a lot of traffic, or top mid page 2, where like, okay, if I make maybe some content improvements or I can build some internal links to this page, we can likely move up a little bit. So we find the striking distance report pretty valuable.
And you can filter by each of the rows too. So if you had a piece of content that you wanted to focus in on, you can sort of see how it's doing over time. That's the
Yeah.
striking distance page. We also have two more. One is the first page. So these are all the queries that are ranking on the first page, and also the second page. So you can think about, like, I think about striking distances like position 6 through 15. And then we thought it would be valuable to have a first and a second page as well. Site health. This was another area that you mentioned getting value out of this.
Yeah, I really like the ranking distribution report, not because it's like an actual rank tracker, mainly because for internally, I'm able to come in here and look at a client's performance over like let's say the last 6 to 12 months and say, okay, are we trending in the right direction for count of queries in the top 5 positions since they've become a client? What about prior when they were a client? What was it looking like? So like I work mainly with SMBs, and our clients don't even see this report in general. Like to us, when Noah showed me version 1, I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is a strategist's dream. But for high level overview stuff too, it makes it super easy for me to check in on clients and say, okay, how are we trending for a certain topic or a certain couple different topics for the client that the client really wants to focus on? Like what Noah just updated. Like, let's say this client really wanted to focus on Trek, and we're looking at from March, like roughly the last 12 months. We see tons of like improvement. Now, if you hover over like at the start from February 24th, how many keywords or queries were in the top 5? So roughly 123, and now it's 921.
Yeah.
So you're able to come in here and say, all right, cool. My team's doing a great job. Client's happy. Everyone's happy. All right, let's move on.
Cool. Yeah, and you can filter by anything. You could filter by any of the keywords. You can filter by page type. You can also filter by question words, and date too. And I like it. We built this also to, I don't know if you noticed this, Blake, but we built this for folks who might be colorblind. We try to use a color palette that would work for everybody too on this page.
Yeah, good, because version 1 was
Not.
the colors were different. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And lessons learned, right?
Yep.
Let's see. This page, do you guys use this page internally? The Topic Explorer page?
I don't know if Topic Explorer was on version 1.
Ooh, okay. Do you want me to talk through it?
Go for it.
Okay. So what I love about this page is it allows you to drill down into a topic area, and then you can work from the term to the page or the page to the term. So you can think about content expansion or keyword expansion on page, and you can think about keyword cannibalization, and you can also think about internal linking all with one tool, which is pretty cool. And you can also do that by filtering at the page level as well for different types of pages if you need to. So let's say, and I almost always use Trek as a brand because it's the most popular brand in the bike industry. And let's say I wanted to then only look at improving the content of my articles. So I could pull that and go for my article type. And then let's say I wanted to focus on going from the page to then find opportunities to expand content on that page. I could look at this electric bikes page, and I could then see the keywords that were getting impressions on that page. By the way, this data is aggregated across all of these keywords. If I then filter into a specific row, I'll get some data about that particular row update. But for this particular page, I'm going to see all these different terms that are appearing on the page. And then I can also visit that page. Oh, this doesn't work, everybody, because I was trying to hide the client's name. But normally it'll go right to that particular, that it would go right to that particular client's page. and we can look at the specific page to see if there's an opportunity to add these terms as H2s, H3s, and then speak to that topic with like a paragraph, an unordered list, or whatever else we think we can get traffic for.
And
That's like going from the page to the keyword. And then you can also go from the keyword to the page to try and see if we have keyword cannibalization going on. And we can also see if we have opportunities for improving internal linking. So if I pick this one keyword, I can then see all the URLs that I'm getting traffic for it. And then I can make a decision around where to push internal links. And I can think about potentially de-optimizing one of these other pages at the same time in order to improve the rankings of this particular page. Does that make
So,
sense? Like,
a question.
Yeah.
How are the page types being assigned?
Great question. So these are hard coded based on the URL path. So the articles include a variety of different URL patterns that have either articles or brand guides or buyer guides in the URL path. Whereas for this particular platform, these PLPs or collection pages are all containing product list, and our product pages all contain product in the URL path. Was that a question that came through, Nico?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps. What do we think? Are we digging this? The topic explorer page? Is it cool? This is what I hate about webinars. So you just can't see the look on people's faces. My favorite part about demoing this in real life with people is that usually their face does this in the Zoom. They start to get closer and closer to the screen as we show it off. Yeah, so let's say you wanted to look at the site from the structure level, right? Like you want to look at it from, you can do the same kind of thing where it's like, hey, how are all my collection pages doing? You can click into the directory structure and then you can see how your content's performing. This is all ranked by impressions out of the box. You can then click on a row and then you can get, whoops, what did I do? What did I do? Hold on a second. You could click on a row. It'll then update all the terms that are available on page. I think what's nice about this is that you can quickly get a sense of how your different sets of pages are performing across the board. I think there's definitely an opportunity to enrich the data with page speed insights. That makes a lot of sense for like round 2 or round 3, whatever we're going to call it.
The other use case I was thinking about for this when I was toying with it is looking at seasonality of directories. Like I work with a fair amount of HVAC companies, and which is a very seasonal business where you could look like, okay, right now heating season is kind of coming to an end, AC season's kind of coming up. So you could look at it and say, okay, historically, here's the trends for that URL that directory structure. What do we need to do to be prepared?
I love that. So would you have heating as a folder and cooling as a folder?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's going to vary. It can be, I mean, top level, yeah, heating. Then the next one would be cooling or AC or air conditioning, whatever the client's URL structure looks like.
I showed this to Blake and he was, whoops, hopefully this will let me click into the page. Whew. Sometimes Zoom won't let you interact with the page. Blake, it seemed like you dug this page when I showed it to you, the 0-click opportunities page.
Yeah, mainly because it's like, okay, we're getting all types of impression data on, then you can sort by keywords or other types of content that you're considering. You can filter like by, I want to see 0-click impression data for that we're ranking on page 1 for. From a strategy standpoint, you could say, okay, this is like the top query pivot bikes. Like, okay, bottom of page 1, 62,300 impressions from November 1st of 2019 up until a couple days ago. Then you could say, okay, what can we do to increase our ranking? I mean, it's a branded bicycle search, right, for a brand. And then you could also, I look at this as like looking for other opportunities where maybe you're ranking position 4 through 6 and say, okay, what title tag test and what kind of meta description test can we do that might result in a small uplift in actual ranking, but could also influence clicks to that page? Because we're on page 1, but we're not getting traffic. What can we do to change it up?
Yep, absolutely. And for me, this hurts big time to see a piece of content ranking on page 1 with 62,000 impressions and no clicks. Like, that's freaking awful. That hurts. The next 3 pages are probably going to be the ones that blow people's minds the most. This is why I think that getting data from the Search Console API is critical, and why I'm thinking of this data as being table stakes for competing in search. Let's go into the bottom of the funnel, and like an experiment that I want to do in the next couple months, focusing on 1 or 2 domains, is what if we only optimize for the bottom of the funnel? And these websites that we're talking about from my end have an e-commerce component, but what would happen if I only optimized for these types of queries? My sense is that we're going to see lots of revenue growth. So number 1, over on the right, you can see that they're sorted by quantities of impressions. We can see that the top one includes sale or for sale. We can see that it has roughly 5 to 6x the quantity of impressions for everything else. If we sort by that, we're going to swing over to Search Console. And this is what blew me away as I was experimenting with trying to understand, like, what can I see with the different tools and what can't I see? We can see that in Search Console over the past 16 months, we get 303 rows. I also performed a search for the brand name. And what I figured out was that roughly 35 to 36% of the queries that we can see through Search Console were either branded or focused on the term sale, which means that 65%, roughly 65% of our queries we have an opportunity with another 65% to for everything else that we'd want to ever rank for, which really sucks if you have a site that has an e-commerce component with a sizable catalog. Okay, so we got 303 rows, which feels like a lot, right? Until you see that our tool gives you insight into 32,532. So it's like a massive increase in visibility. And you can see, yeah, what's up?
I see Andy Simpson is in here too.
Yeah.
He works with lawyers. God bless his soul. But I work with law firms. What can I do? How can I change the buy keywords?
We're going to have to modify them. And that's what I want to get out of office hours and what I want to get out of the next couple of months. Actually, I'm really glad you asked that, because we want to modify the report to have extra reports that work for lead gen, B2B, and service area business focuses. And that I built it based on what I had access to and I had a need to out of the box. And I totally want to build those out next because it makes just a ton of sense. So bottom of the funnel, let's say we want to do versus keywords. I love this for content ideation, product or product category A versus B, frame material A versus B, model A versus B, model A versus B. Check this one out in position 5, Yeti SB5 versus SB6, right? Let's go over in a Search Console, do the same thing. Whoops, let's spell properly. 1 row. Shocking. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I'm completely blown away by, is the lack of visibility in tools. And this is the takeaway. I've been to a lot of conferences, and I remember back in 2017, I was at MozCon Local, and there was a dude on stage from Portent, and he had these really cool Google My Business charts that he was visualizing. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, wow, that sure is fast, as he was switching between Data Studio pages. And I was jealous because I was building everything with native connectors at the time. And what I what I took away from that and what I understood in the moment was, wow, that sure is fast. I had no idea at the disconnect or the disparity between what we had available through Search Console's native UI and what we could get through third-party tools. And at the end of this, I'm going to share with you what we found when we looked at this particular website, how much data we could track through the native UI, through Ahrefs, through what we found with SEMrush, what we found with Supermetrics and the native Search Console connector, and what we could track through this tool. And I think you'll be shocked because I know I was. Anyway, reeling back to MozCon Local, I just didn't understand that the value of the Search Console API was just a radical expansion of what we can see with specific types of queries. And that if all I knew was that there was one row of data or one opportunity to build versus content versus an almost endless opportunity to find opportunities around specific products that are long tail that could give us conversions, like this to me was just a complete mind boggler. Or like, let's think about content where you're trying to say like the best product of X under Y price.
Well, but at the same time, like how much of that versus content could be multi-purpose where you create a YouTube video and you have a blog post about it. So then not only do you potentially get SERP of the YouTube video, but you also got number 2 search engine YouTube. Then you've got your native content. It's a game changer.
Yeah, totally. So under 0 rows versus 448. So it's just like, we don't know what we don't know until we get as much data as is available to us. Notice I didn't say all the data because Google does have limits in terms of what they're delivering via the API. We can also be.
Could you speak to that for a second? Because you did get a question about so the question was, what's the largest number of rows per day that we've handled for a client? But I think that's a good point to talk about the limit in the API.
Okay, cool. So the Search Console limitation is 50,000 rows of data per day per property. And what that means is that depending on how you structure your Search Console setup, you can get more granular than just the site, which means that you could set up a subfolder as a property, and then you can get 50,000 rows from that. Or you could just get, depending on the size of your site and the amount of data that you're pulling in, you could just set up the individual website. And in terms of like that decision-making tree, the way to think through it is, if I'm backfilling data and I see that every single, you can set up Data Studio to track how many rows you're getting per day, right? Let's say all of those rows are below 50,000. There's no need to get more granular. But if you're seeing that it's like 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, that gives you an indicator of, all right, let's see what we can do inside Search Console. And it's not super, conceptually, it's not super hard, but the authentication is a little bit more of a pain in the ass depending on URL structure. Does that answer it, Nico?
Yeah, and I think the most that we've handled is sort of in the, I think 30 to 40 million.
High 40,000s.
Sorry, yeah, high 40,000s. Yeah, so pretty close to the limit.
Yeah, pretty close. And we'll get into costs too, because I think people are going to care about that too when they start thinking about like, hey, what does it actually cost to run BigQuery?
My BigQuery bill was huge last month.
Yeah. It
was 4 cents. I mean, it's going to put me out of business, guys. 4 cents, right?
Yeah. Okay, so this is bottom of the funnel. Again, we can filter by page type too. We can filter by position. The value there is like, hey, what's closest to conversion? Product detail pages. So what can I do with product descriptions, product features, etc., to kind of drive value there? Middle of the funnel, this is like the consideration phase. So we've got a different list of words. There is some overlap between the bottom and the middle, but that's just because we're doing a little bit of fine tuning there. But it's just shocking to me, all of these, like, let's just go with that word, popular, and we'll compare what's available between the two. You know, 0 rows versus, whoops, what did I do wrong? Ooh, that's interesting. Contains, popular. Oh, I feel cheated. I wonder if I'm in a page type, if I selected a page type. Nope, got them all. Yeah, so I got 20. Yes.
Could it
what
be
up?
because on the previous page you did select a page type?
No, they don't carry. It shouldn't carry from page to page. So I'll just do good just for fun as a modifier, because it's always a good idea. Yeah, so 0 versus 26. And it's like that. I mean, we could go one by one by one by one, and I think you'll all be shocked at, like, model year. I love this for building model year content, to see how people are searching for model year stuff. And this captures all of the years in the past whole bunch of years, and it includes everything from 2016, 19, 18, whatever. And if I just plug in 2021 or 2020 into Search Console, I think that what we'll see is then it's going to be pretty minimal what's available. Oops, I guess there's more than I thought. Yeah, so 13 rows versus probably hundreds. Yeah, 145. So it's just totally shocking. Top of the funnel stuff is just, you know, at the awareness stage, same kind of thing. And you could just say, we'll do guide, and then I'll do guide over here, and we can compare the two. 0 versus 52. And it just gives you tons of insight into how people are searching for things so that you can build your content out more efficiently. Site links is kind of fun. Is this good? Am I doing this well? Is this a good flow? Hopefully it's not too boring. Okay, cool. Site links page gives you insight into all of the queries or URLs that you're getting search data for that include site links, which I think is really neat. What I also think is really neat about this is that as you're looking at specific pages, like if you look at these first 3 rows, you'll see that these 2 site links get the same amount of impressions, but this one gets a different quantity of impressions, which I think is really interesting. And we can also see that each of these individual site links also got clicks, which is pretty cool.
Average position for the smaller impressions was very slightly lower too.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And then you can perform a query. You can perform a search. It'll take you right to search results. You can filter by position, question words, page type again, purchase intent keywords too, to get more insight into this stuff. This is also going to return some pretty weird data that is going to look like gobbledygook to everybody. I'm just looking to see if I can find an example. I'll probably go to the last page, but how can I do this? Yeah, I'm not going to be able to show you, but this also is capturing a weird pattern that has like a hashtag, and then it's got some really funky tildes and colons in there, which captures certain types of featured snippets, but not all, and not reliably enough for me to change the title of this page to site links and featured snippets. We've done a bunch of testing. I'm not comfortable making that claim at all. High CTR pages, Blake, you had talked about this being valuable. Potentially.
Yeah, well, if we could exclude brand searches, it would definitely be more valuable.
Yes.
Because then we could start to look at, okay, here are the pages that we're getting like super high click-through rates on, whether it's top, middle, bottom of the funnel. But then kind of looking at what makes this page so generating this such high click-through rate? Is it because like we have a really well-written title tag, or is it because of the meta description, or is it purely based off of position? And then take those learnings and then apply it to pages where maybe your click-through rate isn't as healthy. Like bike builder, that's not a brand search, but it has a click-through rate of 15.47%. That's pretty cool. I would like to say, okay, what can I learn about the bike builder page and apply it to other topically relevant pages across the website to hopefully increase their click-through rate too.
Yeah, very cool. I feel like this page has room for improvement. I'm feeling like these two charts are going to get pushed over with all of our filtering down here, and we'll have click-through rate position, click-through rate bucketing. That makes a lot of sense. Root queries. This is sort of like n-gram analysis. Nico, do you want to chime in on this page? Because this is something that I know you're proud of.
Sure. Yeah. So what this does is it pulls out basically like stems in queries. And the idea behind this was for strategizing around building topic hubs. So having a way to see for example, you have mountain bike down here, and the word mountain bike occurs in 10,618 different queries with a sum total of over 1 million impressions. And so this is especially useful. I think Tracy asked about for nonprofits, and I've used this for nonprofits when you're publishing content around specific topics, and maybe the ways that people search for the topics are kind of obscure. So the sum of all the different keywords is actually a lot, but there is no one keyword that shows up in your top 50.
I love this. And it's sort of like n-gram analysis, because you can filter it by the number of words, right? So you could say like, oh, I want to look at all the 5s. I want to look at all of the 4s.
I think it's great. So, but like as an example, where it shows number of queries, maybe another future iteration, like for Trek Fuel EX8, if I could click on number of queries and have it spit out all those queries right there on the sheet or on a separate page,
Ooh,
that would be rad.
that is very possible. So that's an extra table that filters.
Yeah. So that way you can say, wow, Trek Fuel EX8. What are those 327 other queries? Click it, and then boom, new table with all those queries. You go, okay, this is pretty nice. Then you're able to build your hub and spoke model or whatever you're trying to build.
That's very possible. So we've been talking about having, so like what I'm hearing is click on the link, Nico, opens a separate page like we were doing the other night, with this being passed as a parameter, sort of like it would be passed as a parameter, sort of like to here, and then it would fill in all of the keywords below it, kind of deal.
You can literally hear Noah's gears change in his mind as he's
Oh, yeah,
reading this in his
totally.
head.
I did actually build that. We can't show the client, but
yeah. So I thought it would be kind of neat to do the same root query type thing as a tree map. Nico and I are not quite in the same place. You can see I took a little bit more energy in making this look cool, right? Versus Nico's brainchild, which is also amazing. But this is kind of cool because I'm really visual. Some people are really into like they see stuff in tables really well. I'm more of a visual person. This helps me get a sense of the scale. It does most of the same things. You can filter it by number of words, and then you can see sort of like how the different things work. So you can filter by CTR. We can also go mountain, for example, to use that mountain bike metaphor that you were sharing before, and filter down, which is pretty fun. Here's the mind-boggling piece. This is what we're seeing in keywords tracked between tools for this one website over the past 16 months. And these are the things that shocked me, was the massive disparity in terms of our visibility as search professionals and that when we're working with incomplete information all the time. And even with me pulling 50,000 rows of data per day for a client, there's still sampling and there's still privacy issues that are coming into play. And this is as close as we can get. If we want to work from the native Search Console connector, we were able to track 140,000 keywords. But at the same time, that was at the site level. That wasn't in combination with site and URL. Supermetrics allows us to pull 100,000 rows for the same period of time, but that was at the pro plan, and they had more expensive plans, but it wasn't clear through their pricing models if we'd actually get more data. But that also takes, if you're using that as a connector with a tool like Data Studio, each one of these things, each one of these like filtering deals where I'm clicking on something and it refilters the data in 1 to 3 seconds or whatever, that would take 60 seconds using the Supermetrics connector for it to run that query and then return the data. It was amazing to me that SEMrush and Ahrefs were that far off. We all trust the tools, and my takeaway is that all the tools are directional. There are other tool companies that we tested. The numbers were not quite good enough to include in the chart, and we didn't want to embarrass anybody, so we didn't include them. And that's how it's done, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna skip a couple things and just go down to our takeaways, right? Massive visibility. I just talked about that. This was my question. So we know, I guess I should do the full presentation piece. I should go like that. So we know that our keyword tracking is way off, but how bad is our backlink data too? And I don't have an answer to that, but this is where my mind started churning. And I started to think about, okay, so we know about PBNs and we know that they're a real problem, and we know that websites are blocking third-party tool companies, but how bad is it really? Like, I don't have an answer to that, but that's where my mind went. The other takeaway for me is that all of our data is directional, and that getting perfect answers, it's never going to happen. It's always going to be directional. And we have to be okay with that as search professionals. The other insights were that even though it's directional, we can get way more granular than with any other tool that we've encountered, which was really exciting to us. It also allowed us to see the very long tail. And that's something that's missing through most of the other tools. You're going to see like some long tail queries, but you're not going to see just the massive stuff that we're able to show.
This is especially true if you work in local search. Trying to get like explicit query data from a third-party tool it's a fraction of what it actually is.
Yeah. It's really fast. And it makes it, why speed matters. I don't know how anyone else in the room likes to do their work, but a lot of times when I'm doing exploration of data, I'll have a hypothesis in my mind. I'll look through the data down multiple steps. And if the tool can keep up with me as I'm exploring, then it allows me to have more insights faster and faster. And this tool can keep up with me as I'm thinking. Whereas other tools that might take 30 to 60 seconds for that first visibility of that first stage of the analysis, it just means that you can't go down those roads as efficiently or as quickly. And this allows me to ideate faster and faster and to actually have insights that I wasn't capable of having without it, which was kind of shocking to me. We found that optimizing any stage of the funnel is way easier with a tool like this. That was my takeaway. And it also means that content expansion and ideation is a total hoot. It's really fun. For us, like when we think about what impact we want to make in the world, we think a lot about the concept of democratizing data. We want to make it accessible both for other agencies and organizations. And over time, we want to make this data more accessible for solo practitioners and individual website owners, and that this is our first step moving in that direction. And I also want to just give a little bit of gratitude to a whole bunch of people who really helped create this tool. And there's a lot of people on this list, and I'm not going to call them all out, but I do want to call out Hamlet. He made a huge difference in me believing in myself, and I just wanted to call him out. Also, some technical advisors that played an outsized role. David Sotomano, Dale McGeorge, who's the founder of Jepto. He really guided me in learning how to build applications at scale. Also want to call out John Murch and Brian Heckler from Local SEO Guide. Also Dan Leipson for giving great advice and counsel, J.R. Oaks for making me think harder. Just a ton of amazing people who gave tons of insight. And what's happening in the future really quickly. I'll keep it quick. We want to develop the tool more for lead gen and B2B. So we're looking for partners to help us down that road. And I know Blake's going to be really instrumental there. Data enrichment with other sources, whether it's trends, GA, paid data, that's coming soon. And I think it's going to make the tool crazy powerful. And we want to get more granular. So we're looking to partner with enterprise sites that have tons and tons of directories so we can push the limits of the tool. And if you have questions, feedback, definitely email me. And I'm stoked to chat about this with anybody. We've had a total blast making it, and it's been, just a lot of fun for me to share it with you. Coming up soon, I'll be at Local U talking about using this tool for driving revenue for Brick to Click. And then, I'll also be at MozCon, which will be super fun. And I hope to see you all there. And if we can help you with any of these things, 2 Octobers would love to. We do PPC, we coach, we do SEO, content marketing, tool building. We do all that stuff. We've got some workshops coming up. Nico's one in April is a real highlight for me. I think he gets tons of folks really stoked on the data storytelling. And you can sign up for webinars at the link down below. And it's been a total pleasure for me to share this with you guys. Definitely reach out if I can help with anything. If you have not met me personally yet, you will probably find that I'm one of the most collaborative people in SEO. And if you're working on something cool, I'd love to be a part of it. I'm really active on Twitter, and I'm really active in Clubhouse. And
really active in Clubhouse.
Come on, tone it down. But that's a great place to connect with me, and I'd love to chat about all this stuff. And I think that is it.